A shocking new development out of the Middle East. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has openly declared Israel's intention to escalate pressure on Hamas while simultaneously pushing ahead with a controversial plan once floated by former U.S. President Donald Trump: the voluntary emigration of Gaza's 2.3 million residents. But what exactly does this mean for Palestinians, for the region, and for the world? Welcome to 2230. Today, we bring you in-depth coverage of a complex, fast-evolving situation that's both politically explosive and deeply human. Stick with us, because the details you'll hear may not only change your view on what's happening in Gaza, they may also raise urgent questions about the future of the region. On Sunday, Netanyahu announced that his cabinet had agreed to increase military pressure on Hamas, despite Hamas agreeing to a ceasefire proposal brokered by Egypt and Qatar. While this might sound contradictory, Netanyahu argues that negotiations under fire are more effective, suggesting military action is the leverage forcing Hamas to the table. And he might not be wrong. Hamas has reportedly agreed to release 5 Israeli hostages weekly as part of the ceasefire plan, but crucially, they continue to reject Israel's demand to disarm. This is where the situation becomes even more contentious. As Israeli strikes resumed on March 18 following a brief truce in January, hundreds of Palestinians have been killed. On the first day of Eid al-Fitr alone, at least 20 people, including children, were reportedly killed in Israeli airstrikes, with 9 perishing in a single tent in Khan Yunis. Many families who had returned to northern Gaza during the truce are now fleeing once again. But perhaps the most provocative part of Netanyahu's announcement was his reference to Trump's voluntary emigration plan. Originally proposed as a way to move Gaza's entire population to countries like Egypt and Jordan while redeveloping the region as a U.S.-backed resort, this plan has been widely condemned and rejected by neighboring countries. Now Netanyahu says Israel is ready to discuss it at any time. He also confirmed that Hamas leaders will be allowed to leave Gaza and reiterated that the goal remains the total dismantling of Hamas military and governing infrastructure. Back in Israel, protests are growing. Families of hostages and pro-democracy demonstrators are joining forces, criticizing the government's handling of the war and hostage negotiations. Netanyahu dismissed the criticism as empty claims, insisting that military pressure brought hostages home and will continue to do so. This story is about far more than two sides exchanging fire. It's about how nations justify military action, how humanitarian crises unfold during religious celebrations, and whether the displacement of millions can ever be called voluntary. We want to hear from you. Do you think military pressure helps or hinders hostage negotiations? And what are the long-term consequences of proposing mass emigration plans in the middle of a war? Hit the like button if you found this coverage informative, share it with someone who needs to know what's really happening, and don't forget to subscribe to 2230 for detailed and thoughtful news that puts the facts and your voice first.